All right. So, apologies for the audio. I know the waterfall is pretty loud right there, but I don't have a microphone with me, so it is what it is. Had like quite a setback. Nothing terrible, but I haven't been able to perform on this trip as much as I would have hoped, and actually I've backslid quite a bit in terms of my like personal health. So it's been a little bit frustrating. I've still managed to do some climbing that I'm pretty proud of on this trip, and it hasn't been a total loss by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I've even climbed a couple of things that are reasonably hard. But for me, the thing that's at stake, or the thing that really drives my ability to get satisfaction out of my climbing, is like what the actual sensations are like while I'm climbing. So lately, I've been able to create a lot of force on the wall, but because I'm just in this, more painful, more inflamed kind of state of discomfort, the feeling of actually being on the wall and the feeling of trying hard isn't really a good feeling. It hurts, and it's not fun. So that kind of sucks the joy out of the sport a little bit if you know that you can do something hard, but you also know that it's gonna, have this cost, and it's gonna cost you something. The experience is not going to be as good as you might hope that it would be. So I won't get into a lot of detail about the health thing. I think the short version, a lot of you probably know that I just have some chronic health issues, and it's been quite hot in Squamish, up in the 90s or like 35 Celsius, for probably 8 to 10 days of the month that we've been here so far, which is unusually hot for Squamish. Even in the middle of summer, that's quite hot, and most places here don't have AC, so it's kind of been this like downward spiral of it's really hot, and then I can't really sleep at night, and then my recovery has gone down, and then all this, these processes with my body kind of kicked off. And I think that's the first kind of takeaway that I wanted to mention in this video today, is it all comes out of the same bucket. So my training was really good. I came into this trip feeling quite fresh, especially given that I was coming off of a back injury that I sustained in April. But I had a lot of energy. I was feeling really strong. My weight was up, which for me is a good sign. And everything was going quite well. I had even made some room in my coaching. I had sort of lined things up so that I had a little bit more space in my work schedule so that I could spend more time climbing, because I was confident that I would have the energy for that. And I also planned on doing at least one day of lifting a week, but probably two, again, assuming that I was like feeling really good and feeling up to it. I was sort of assuming I would do like 2 hard days of climbing, 2 lifting days, and maybe 1 easier day of climbing a week. That's, been fairly normal for me the last year and a half or 2 years. Hasn't quite worked out that way. I think in the first 30 days here, I got a total of 11 climbing days, which is still, pretty good. I think that's pretty close to on target. And then something like 5 lifting days, but the content of those days was definitely not what I would have hoped for. Basically because of that allostatic load, that bucket, right? It's like, at a certain point, my recovery was just too low to sustain the things that I wanted to do. And by the time I caught on to that process, it was just like a little bit too late. My recovery was too poor, and my autoimmune stuff had kind of spiraled out of control. So I've just spent the last couple weeks mostly hanging out. The hardest boulder that I've done on the trip, I did maybe a week ago or so. But that was the only thing I climbed that day. I've kept my total volume extremely low, and I'll just work the moves that I need to and kind of snipe my attempts, which is something that I'm used to doing, but maybe not to the degree that I've been having to do it on this trip. It's felt like most climbing days I only pull off the ground a handful of times. And to be honest, those days have left me feeling really poor. So it has been a bit of a struggle. I am actually at the project. It's around the corner. It's just by a waterfall, so it's really loud. And I figured I would swing by the project and just chat about this a little bit, because there's a few things, besides that first takeaway that everything comes out of the same bucket. There's a few other things that I want to talk about. I think that's something most of us have chatted about at one time or another. But that's your life stress, that's your nutrition, that's your sleep, that's your climbing and training load, that's your family stress, your work stress. We'd like to think that those things are separate, and that if we climb several days in a row and then we do a 10-hour drive home, that 10-hour drive counts as a rest day because it's not climbing. But that is still stress. It is something that your body has to do, and you're not relaxing during that time. And it's important to acknowledge that that is part of the process of training. Every time people have a setback, I like to bring up the fact that good training is not something that happens in this vacuum that you put yourself into, where you just separate yourself from your job and your family and your health concerns or whatever it is that's going on. And you go in there like you're in some, chamber from Dragon Ball Z and like train in there and then come out some superhuman. That's not good training, because the only people who can do that are professional athletes, and probably young professional athletes who have no other responsibilities whatsoever. The reality is nobody really can train like that. Good training is your ability to tolerate setbacks and look at the bigger picture and understand what's going on in your life, and then adjust and make compensations to the plan to cope with whatever it is that's changed. So in my case, in my particular experience, most recently, I think there was about a 1 week lag time where I was just in denial about what was going on with my body. I was just thinking, oh, my fingers are really sore. My back injury is kind of sore. This bicep thing that I had 2 years ago, I'm feeling that a little bit. Now my hips are talking to me, and my hips never talk to me. And then it's like, okay, it's been 7 days since my fingers started feeling more sore than usual, and now I'm starting to realize like the alarm bells are going off, and it really does take that long for me to figure it out, despite the fact that I've been doing this for a long time. But once I get there, the path forward is actually quite clear. I just need to get over the hump that it is, at least right now, the next couple weeks, they're not going to be the way that I wanted them to be. Count Your Blessings is 50 feet away from me. I've climbed on it, I think 7 times so far, 6 times this trip. And it's very likely that I will not send that boulder on this trip, but that's okay. I still have gotten to climb on it. I've still made huge progress towards eventually doing it sometime. I just might not climb it in the next month. The reality is, if I wanted that outcome even more, if I wanted to send that problem even more, the best strategy would still be to not stress about that outcome and focus on what I can do right now to feel better, right? The best strategy would not be to ignore the warning signs that I've been given and just keep hammering at these boulders and keep trying these really hard boulders, right? The smart thing to do is to step away from it, plan ahead, and try to come back when it's more appropriate. And whether that is, a couple months from now, or a year from now, or a week from now, I don't know yet. So, lesson number 2, the simplest way to move forward when things go wrong is acceptance. Because as I've talked about, you can't begin until you begin from where you're at. And where I'm at right now is I'm in Squamish. I have another month left. I'm very, very lucky and grateful that I have that time. That's the main currency that we have to spend is our time. So is it going to be exactly the dream trip that I would have hoped that it would have been? Probably not. But like I said, I've still made a lot of progress, and I'm still here getting to do the thing that I love doing, maybe just at a slightly reduced volume from what it could be. So I'll tell you one thing that I absolutely will do, and that is I'm going to pay closer attention to my state and my recovery. I'm going to do everything that I can to improve my sleep and get really dialed with my diet, more so than I usually would be, and just give my body all the space that it needs to get over whatever it is that it's dealing with, right? I think that it's a systemic issue, and I'm not going to worry about trying to rehab any particular injury or training in a different way. I'm just going to reduce my volume, pay really close attention to what kind of holds I grab and stuff. But mostly I'm just going to not worry too much about the fact that my body hurts more than normal. I'm going to focus on my recovery side of things and focus on my logistical side of things. And insofar as I might get more time to climb on the project, if I hear from people that they want to go up and climb on Count, if there's going to be a session up there, I will definitely join that session, and I will just have to restrain myself a little bit. But the wonderful thing about bouldering, especially long-term projects in not even just bouldering, long-term projects in climbing, is you are only constrained by the timeline if you let yourself be. And I know that I'm, again, sitting here lucky enough to have a month, but even if your trips are shorter than that, you can go on another trip. And if you really attack things very head on, very outcome driven, I must do it now, I think most of the time you wind up getting less out of the experience anyway, even if you do send it. The other thing that I've been trying this trip is called Perfect Cave, and I got completely spanked on this problem in 2019. And my first session on it, on returning here to Squamish, I basically was like, it might be fun to try Perfect Cave and just kind of see how that feels. It's like a notoriously crimpy, dynamic, like momentum-oriented, technique-oriented V11. It's only a handful of moves, but they're all very hard and complicated. And I almost did it on my first session.
Oh, no! Come on!
And I've been back twice now, and I've almost done it a whole bunch more times.
Stop! Oh, come on!
And one of those sessions, the first one after I almost did it, the second session, was probably the most frustrating session of climbing I've had in the last year or something.
Fuck! God. Fucking frustrating, man. What a fucking frustrating session.
Because I was so hung up on the fact that I almost did it. I was so obsessed with the idea that I could do it, that I could have done it, that I wasn't even enjoying climbing on it. I was not enjoying being in the forest. I was no fun to be around. And I just completely lost the plot. And then the most amazing thing happened. I learned from that experience because I realized that's not how I want to feel. And I talk to people all the time who struggle with this. And I obviously struggle with it from time to time. And I went into my third session. Before I had my third session, I told myself, I'm just going to go up there. I'm going to try it 5 times. I'm going to get extremely well warmed up so that I can make all 5 of those tries really maximally count. And my intent for the day is just to give those 5 tries, nothing else. I don't care where I get on the boulder. I don't care how I feel at the end of the day. I'm going to have a smile on my face. And somehow, day 1, I almost did it. Day 2, I almost did it a bunch of times, got really frustrated. Day 3, I actually had not just the finishing jug in my hand, but the next hold in my hand, and I still managed to not do the boulder.
Come on. Ah! Oh no! Oh no!
No, my heel, I like fucked my sequence up, my heel popped.
But the big difference is I had a great day on day 3 because I was smiling from the moment I accidentally cut my feet holding those jugs and dabbed. I just had this shit-eating grin on my face because I told myself that I was going to have a good day of climbing. I told myself that I was going to pay attention to how I felt and that I was going to deliberately climb on the problem and have a good day.
That's incredibly confidence inspiring. I don't even care. I made a mistake.
Oh, no. Nice go. Nice work.
I just forgot to switch the heel to a toe. And actually, while I was cutting my feet, I was like, am I gonna dab? Maybe I won't dab, but I don't want to.
I thought you weren't gonna dab for
I don't want to do it like that anyway, so that's not the way I'm doing it. But it fucking goes.
I think we think that we want to just go out and crush everything in our path, and that's the fun day that we're looking for. And when we don't get that, we get kind of frustrated. But in reality, I don't actually think most of us want that. I think what we want is to be aligned in the session with the expectations that we set for ourselves. And when we don't think about it, we automatically set the expectation of doing whatever the thing is. And the biggest lesson I've learned on this trip came from that third day of trying Perfect Cave. And the lesson was, no matter where I'm at in my climbing, no matter how my body feels that day, I can have a good day and I can have fun and I can make some progress in my climbing if I have the right attitude. And I know how trite that sounds, but it's so real. It is the realest thing that you can do in rock climbing, is to get in touch with your feelings and get in touch with what you're actually trying to get out of the session right now. Will I climb V11 or V12 on this trip? I don't know. But if I have just a couple more days as satisfying as that one, I'll be happy. And I think that's a really important thing to take home, because If I had driven home straight after that second session, if it had been a weekend and I had driven home after that second session, it would have been really hard for me to go back to that problem. But as it is now, having had the hindsight of having that third session and having a ton of fun, I can't fucking wait to climb on that thing again. I'm just beyond ecstatic, even though I don't feel very good and it's really extra hard right now. I'm psyched. So I hope some of that is useful for you guys. I know that it's pretty particular to my exact situation right now. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening and following and supporting. I really appreciate working with all of you individually, and I realize that my luck of being able to come here and flail off of V11s at this point in my life now is because I have created this job. I've created this space for myself where I can do what I do with all of you, and I don't take that lightly. So when I have a bad day, I know that I'm letting you guys down, because you guys are the reason that I'm able to be here in the first place. So thank you. I really appreciate your support, and I will talk to you all soon.